would you, I guess, define a manic pixie dream girl in your own words?
I mean, to me, it's just like a woman supporting character who is not fully fleshed out as her own character and exists pretty much solely as a prop to the male main characters. But even then, that's kind of a broad definition because, there's characters that like we might consider a manic pixie dream girl. Like one of the biggest ones that comes to mind is Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim. But part of that was because Scott Pilgrim only got the one movie, and in the story of Scott Pilgrim, she does get a lot more character development, but it was in the later books, and it just didn't get to that part in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think. I mean, you know, I don't know. It's kind of a broad thing. It's kind of hard to define what it is, but it's like you know it when you see it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I would also say, for me, a manic pixie dream girl is a girl who's supposed to be just a love interest in a way. Like the male character sees her as like the the solution to all his problems, you know? And also the male character is always boring. I'm just gonna say this. They're always boring, they're always sad, they always have something going on, they always have some existential crisis, and I find it very weird that you as a human being see a relationship as the end all be all solution to whatever is going on in your life. Like, do we all want a connection? Yes. Would we do we all like not want to like die alone? Yeah. So you would desire a relationship. But for a relationship to be the one thing you feel like is going to like absolve you of every single issue you have going on in your life, that's delusional in of itself. And for you to
Mm-hmm.
think like a woman can solve all your problems, like we already have our own problems we have to deal with. Why should I solve yours? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Put on your thinking cap, sir. Okay, you can figure it out, I promise. Yes. And I definitely I feel like my first introduction to the Manic Pixie Dream Girl was in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And I remember when I first watched this movie, I genuinely didn't know what it was about. I just kind of watched it randomly one night on Netflix, and I was just surprised by the story. Because, first of all, the movie's told in like a non linear format in the same way with 500 Days of Summer. Which I think is a very interesting way to tell a love story because you can kind of start with, of course, the protagonist, which is the guy, and he's sad, he's down in his luck, he is single because he just got a breakup, and so now he wants to figure out ways to remove these feelings away from him and not be sad anymore. In 500 Days, it was Tom, I think his name is, played by Joseph Gordon Levitt, and he is sad because Summer has broken up with him. And then there's Joel, who literally goes through a procedure to have his mind wiped, which is an interesting concept to have in the year of our Lord 2004. But not at all like, I guess not that far fetched because science does come a long way. Um, you would say. But I do find it interesting how like the how Clementine has oftentimes been an example. Clementine and Summer have been an example of like the manic pixie dream girl trope, but they aren't really manic pixie dream girls. You know, like there are some characteristics they have where they're both quirky, they're both very different, they're not like other girls. Clementine falls into the trope so easily because she changes her hair color like the seasons, and Summer likes the Smiths. She's different from other girls. She likes indie rock. Like, oh my gosh. And she thinks Ringo is the best Beatle. That makes her so different and unique. But she's not just Summer. They're not just Clementine. Like, they have their own wants and needs. And I think I love Clementine a little more than Summer. I find that she's a lot more relatable to me. And just that I like that she is, like, more visibly screwed up in a way. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? She seems a lot more flawed, you know, and I like that about her a lot. Yeah. Um, who would you say that you like a little bit more, like Clementine or Summer, when it comes to?
I mean, it's been a few years since I've seen those movies.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in 500 Days of Summer, like if I remember right, that movie ends with her telling him off and being like, "Leave me alone, get a life. Like I'm not. You're obsessed with me. Like I'm not this person you think I am." And in
Basically,
that
yeah.
way, yeah, it kind of turned the trope on its head, the same way that that Ruby Sparks does.
Mm-hmm.
And because in the case of Ruby Sparks, where it was written by Zoe Kazan,
Mm-hmm.
um, that movie, that is the whole point of the movie, is that this writer literally writes a manic pixie dream girl for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so her being a manic pixie dream girl is quite literally the point of the movie, because he takes away all agency from her because he is her creation, his creation come to life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is just so, you can really tell, like, yeah, a woman wrote this movie because she's taking that trope and turning it on its head. And there's a few examples of that, of like, um, where a woman writes this character and then it's a different case.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ruby Sparks is a great example because it is quite literally a mediocre writer who created his perfect idealized woman who will do whatever he says.
Yeah. Yeah. In Ruby Sparks, I love that movie because I got into it around when I was like really into Tumblr, and there was like the White Boy of the Month whole thing, and obviously Paul Dano with like his floppy brown hair fits that perfectly, and
Oh yeah.
uh, I remember watching the movie for the first time and just being like kind of surprised by it, how she like came into his life, and if you enjoy watching these highlights, subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so you know when a new video is uploaded. I remember watching it. I rewatched it recently, just to like give myself a refresher, and it's so funny how she starts to want to just like exist outside of him. You know, she wants to go out, she wants to have friends, she wants to go to a class. And when we see him interacting with his mom and his stepdad, Antonio Banderas, that's what I knew, like, oh, this is the start of the end for these two. Because first of all, he didn't even want to go on the weekend, and then he gets there and he's not even like hanging out with anybody. He's not talking to anybody, which like also me at family functions,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not a social person at all. But you can clearly see like when his mom Annette Bening kind of pulls out the photo album, it shows who she used to be, and with his dad, it's clear that she wasn't really happy. She was just kind of like being the person that she had to be with her husband. When her husband left, she was able to become a multifaceted person and gain new interest. And because she did that, he didn't like it because his mom was no longer his mom, but she was just like a person now. She was someone who was
Mm-hmm.
different, had different sides to herself. And to see this different side of her made him uncomfortable. And so now it's like bled into his relationships with women, where he wants his girlfriend to just kind of fit into this one dimensional character. And if she doesn't, then he's not happy. And I also think it's weird when guys tell their girlfriends not to have friends. I think that's like a huge red flag, because how are you going to date somebody and they don't have any interest outside of you? Because then that's not a girlfriend, that's a pet, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge red flag. And I love that Zoe Kazan wrote this movie, because it just shows that like how nuanced the whole film is. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, and the fact that her husband in real life
Mm-hmm.
plays the main character in the movie, it's like, I just wish that she would write more movies at this point, because like
Yeah.
the only thing about Ruby Sparks that I didn't like, I would say, was the way it ended.
Mm.
Um, like, you know, getting into spoilers, but at the end of the movie, he sees Ruby again at the park, and she doesn't remember who he is. Um, to me, it felt like the ending either should have been that he meets a completely new girl at the park who is not related to Ruby at all, and that the interaction could have shown how he changed as a person, or it could have been that he saw Ruby at the park and chose not to speak to her.
Mm-hmm.
That those two I think would have been a better ending, and I think that maybe that Zoe Kazan had an idea for an ending in that like that in mind, and the studio said no, no, it has to be like a happy ending.
Mm-hmm. Right. I 100% agree with you on that because that is how 500 Days of Summer ends. You know, after Tom has finally gotten over summer and moved on with his life, he meets a girl when he's about to walk into an interview, and her name is Autumn, which I laughed when
Yeah,
I saw that. I was like, let her name be Tara. Let her name be Michelle. Literally any other name.
yeah,
Because the next
for
thing you know, he's
real.
gonna meet a girl named Frost. He's gonna meet a girl
Yeah,
named I don't know.
April. Yeah,
April. Oh, May.
yeah,
Please.
exactly.
But I agree with you on that because it's better for the male protagonist to really like move on and just fully move on from the woman. Therefore, moving on from their idealized version of romance that the people that you date have to fit a certain criteria and have to fit into a certain box. And they have to, like, you know, just be the person that you want them to be instead of them being their own selves, you know. And I'm glad that we saw that scene with Lila and Ruby Sparks, where she like was talking to him, and she was kind of like, "Oh, she's an artist. Okay, that's very unthreatening." And I was like, "Wow, this
Hmm.
is this is good. This is really good." Because she
Hmm.
also is like, you know, very pale skin, freckles, long red hair, you know, very like slim build, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." I see what you did there. Nice. All right. So you're
Hmm.
making the idealized version of your ex girlfriend. Because, like, in the beginning of Ruby Sparks, he spent all this time talking about, like, oh, she broke up with me after my dad died. She left me alone. Like, blah, blah, blah. And it's also, I find it rude if the first time you see someone for a while, you're like, oh, you finally finished writing your novel. That's good. It's like, can't you say congratulations? That was a little condescending. Like, just say, like, good job. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and bringing up like ways that the trope can be subverted.
Mm-hmm.
There was a line in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind um, where Clementine says to Jim Carrey's character, I think Joel was his name.
Yeah.
She says, "Too many guys think I'm a concept, or I complete them, or I'm going to make them alive. But I'm just
Mm-hmm.
a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours."
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a fair thing to say to somebody because why would you put that pressure on someone else to make your life feel complete when you don't even know what they have going on with their own selves?
Hmm.
That's just kind of weird and also a little effed up and very selfish at that for you to assume that like another person is here to just like make your life better and to
Yeah.
expect them
One,
to do
there
that.
was, if you look, there was an interview with Zoe Kazan
Mm-hmm.
about Ruby Sparks, where she said that like the term Manic Pixie Dream Girl, that she doesn't really like the term at all,
Mm-hmm.
and felt that the term should only be used to criticize writers who create one-dimensional female characters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she thought that like the very existence of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, that it could be reductive and misogynistic depending on how someone, you know, qualifies. A girl is not just a manic pixie dream girl because she is a girlish love interest of a male character. Like there's more nuance to it in terms of like how you would define that. And like we just said, there's instances like 500 Days of Summer where probably a lot of men who saw that movie missed the point.
Yep.
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, men who watch the movie who miss the point.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Since you're at the end of the video, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment down below. If you want early access to these highlights, join our Patreon. Patrons have access to our entire archive, including full-length videos. Patrons also have the opportunity to choose a topic for our podcast, and they get the opportunity to be a guest. Join now.